are two Cameroons that came together. If you are telling us, like a state minister stood here last year and told us that what happened in Cameroon is like dropping a few cubes of sugar into a basin of water. Who is the sugar and who is the water? I'm asking. Nation that you call yours, people can do what has been done to our children in West Cameroon. I call it West Cameroon because you will never take it out of our mouths again, because that is a territory in which we believe in freedom. To go out on the street and demonstrate is a basic right for us. And that is why we are saying that there are two Cameroons that came together. If you are telling us, like a state minister stood here last year and told us that what happened in Cameroon is like dropping a few cubes of sugar into a basin of water. Who is the sugar and who is the water? I'm asking. Nation that you call yours, people can do what has been done to our children in West Cameroon. I call it West Cameroon because you will never take it out of our mouths again, because that is a territory in which we believe in freedom. To go out on the street and demonstrate is a basic right for us. And that is why we are saying that there are two Cameroons that came together. If you are telling us, like a state minister stood here last year and told us that what happened in Cameroon is like dropping a few cubes of sugar into a basin of water. Who is the sugar and who is the water? I'm asking.
Wow. C'est sûr. Hein?
Good evening. Welcome to this edition of Comrade Fontan Daniel. I will be speaking live here from the great state of Texas, here in the United States. And I want to appreciate all my viewers here in United States and around the world. It is 12:24 here in the great state of Texas, here in the United States, and probably, if not 12:26 in ground zero in Southern Cameroon territory, and probably equivalent to the same time in France, Paris, and in the neighboring country, La Republique de Cameroon. Welcome to this edition of broadcast Who is Bernard Emi. So today is going to be a very interesting topic of discussion of Southern Cameroon territory, and I really appreciate all my fellow citizens of Southern Cameroon throughout, scattered throughout. And Many left Southern Cameroon territory, not because that is their hope or their wishes, but they left because of destruction of the Southern Cameroon territory by unintended invasion by a foreign country that was superimposed upon the people of Southern Cameroon territory. So I'm going to be speaking more and about what is going on in Southern Cameroon territory. Why is France the architects of genocide in Southern Cameroon and the rest of African continent as a whole? But anyway, stay tuned for this vital broadcast, and please, if you are joining me live, please don't hesitate to share. This is Comrade Fulton Daniel speaking live here from the great state of Texas, here in the United States. So, before we get into that heated discussion, fellow brothers and sisters, thank you so much for tuning on for this what make up key news broadcast. But the
nation that you call yours, people can do what has been done to our children in West Cameroon. I call it West Cameroon because you will never take it out of our mouths again, because that is a territory in which we believe in freedom. To go out on the street and demonstrate is a basic right for us. And that is why we are saying that there are two Cameroons that came together. If you are telling us, like a state minister stood here last year and told us that what happened in Cameroon is like dropping a few cubes of sugar into a basin of water. Who is the sugar and who is the water? I'm asking.
Welcome again. This is Comrade Fulton Daniel. I will be speaking live here from the great state of Texas, here in the United States. Many of you may not know what is going on in Southern Cameroon territory. There is a cool, gradual genocide going on in Southern Cameroon and slaughtering of citizens of Southern Cameroon. But before I brought to that, let me bring this questions asked a reporter by citizens of Southern Cameroon. Then that will lead us into the main topic of discussion.
In West Cameroon. I call it West Cameroon because you will never take it out of our mouths again, because that is a territory in which we believe in freedom. To go out on the street and demonstrate is a basic right for us. And that is why we are saying that there are two Cameroons that came together. If you are telling us, like a state minister stood here last year and told us that what happened in Cameroon is like dropping a few cubes of sugar into a basin of water. Who is the sugar and who is the water? I'm asking.
You're up first.
Hi, good day for your program. I'm watching you right now, and the question I have for Mark is, how does he intend to ensure that what he covers get the desired effect? What I'm saying is, I am part of a global issue coverage guide. For example, there's a genocide that is happening in British Cameroun, that is in West Africa, where we have more than 13,000 people killed 9,000 homes burned, 1.5 million people internally displaced, more than 200,000 as refugees in Nigeria, and there's continuous killing every day. There is a website that Mark can go there and see. It's called AmbazoniaGenocideLibrary.com. You won't believe what is happening, and the world is silent. Mark, how do you get these issues on the table of decision makers? It's more than Rwanda. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. And the situation to which you refer, the persecution of Anglophones in Cameroon, is indeed a subject that I have covered in depth, twice at least, on the podcast over the last couple of years. Most recently, a few weeks ago, I had a senior official named Jan Egeland, who is a former top United Nations official and now is head of a very large international relief organization called the Norwegian Refugee Council, on the show to discuss exactly what you are talking about, the persecution of Anglophones in a conflict in the Anglophone region of Cameroon. And one thing from that conversation still sticks out to me. That conflict has displaced, as you said, several 100,000 people, but it's also led to now over 1 million children who are out of school, who are unable to attend school because of this conflict. And, it's issues like precisely that you just identified that I seek to bring to a larger audience. These are issues that animate, for example, the Cameroonian diaspora, of which I presume you are a part, but they have broader global significance, and so I see it as my mission to bring those stories that may resonate among our community but are of importance to the broader global community and bring that to a broader foreign policy audience. So thank you for your question.
It was May 8th of this year. A Crisis in Cameroon is the title of the podcast. If that viewer or others want to view or listen to your podcast, where can they go?
Go to globaldispatchespodcast.com is probably the easiest way. Or if you have an iPhone, you can just open up your Apple Podcasts app and search for Global Dispatches, World News That Matters.
Elizabeth is next out of Glen Allen, Virginia. Democrat, good morning.
Good morning. I grew up in Central Africa, Cameroon. I'm just wondering why it's taking so long for the United Nations to intervene in the civil war or the conflict in Cameroon. You have soldiers dying from the government, you have separatists dying, and you have civilians dying. I grew up knowing that prevention is always better than to cure. Why is the United Nations, and America in particular, allowing...
The situation in Cameroon continues to decline, and to be frank, Congress, the international community, and Cameroonian citizens who I receive regularly in our office, either in person or by phone, are concerned about where this country is heading. The tensions in the Anglophone region are not new. People have felt disenfranchised and marginalized since the end of colonialism. But as we heard, the current situation arose in late 2016 after the government was heavy-handed in its response to the Anglophone protest movement, killing protesters, arresting hundreds, and deploying government security forces. On the other side, the Anglophone movement has also transformed. There are elements that are now a separatist movement. Separatists have become more and more militant and have been accused of committing abuses, including killing security forces, attacking and burning down schools, and attacking citizens. People in the Anglophone region feel deeply wounded. Over the course of the last week or so in my office, we have received hundreds of calls from people saying that there is genocide in the Anglophone region. Meanwhile, the government has said that there is no one to negotiate with, and the separatists do not want to come to the table. What this says to me is that there is serious work to be done to bring both sides to the table to end this conflict and to determine whether or not genocide is actually taking place. I do not aim to tell this country what to do. What we here in Congress want to do is to encourage dialogue in order to make sure that Cameroon is not the site of a civil war. The government must recognize that it is facing a real national crisis, and the international community is watching. And activists must realize that peaceful, nonviolent protest is the only way to get people to hear their cause. This resolution, HRES 358, calls on the government of Cameroon and armed groups to respect the human rights of all Cameroonian citizens. to end all violence and to pursue a broad-based dialogue without preconditions to resolve the conflict in the Northwest and Southwest regions. I encourage my colleagues to support this resolution and to send the message to Cameroon and the world that we remain engaged in the world.
Time has expired.
I ask consent to speak for an additional 2 minutes.
Without objection.
Thank you. The problem of torture among refugees is significant, with an estimated 44% of refugees in the U.S. having been victims of such horrors. Those from Bosnia, Cambodia, and many other places all received the treatment at Kovler Center to recover from their trauma. During my visit, I had the privilege of meeting refugees who had fled the mounting violence in Cameroon. Cameroon, a West African nation, is dealing with complicated colonial legacy. Following World War I, the League of Nations appointed France and Great Britain as joint trustees of what was previously a German colony. Not surprisingly, the two colonial powers imposed their own cultures on the new Cameroon. And tragically, following the country's independence in the 1960s, Cameroonian strongman, President Paul Biya, one of the world's longest-serving leaders, now almost 40 years in office, further favored the French-speaking over the Anglophones. The results were not surprising. Mounting immense resentment and calls for greater autonomy within the Anglophone population, with ensuing violent suppression from the Biya regime. The refugees I met with told harrowing stories of this crackdown and violence. I was pleased to join Senator Van Hollen late last year in a letter urging Secretary Pompeo to focus U.S. attention on the unrest in Cameroon. Equally pleased when the administration scaled back U.S. military assistance to Cameroon due to this government's violent repression. As a member of the Appropriations Committee, I will be watching carefully on the level of violence in Cameroon when the day comes when we consider any foreign aid to this nation. The work of the Kovler Center is a reminder that if we are going to stand up for human rights, we must be willing to be vigilant at all times, even for small countries far away like Cameroon. Mr. President, I yield the floor.
Of course, this brings us to this discussion. I'm sure you listened from U.S. Congress members, Ken Bass, and also the U.S. Senate representative and the journalists reporting on the ongoing genocide in Southern Cameroon. Of course, it is quite amazing that the people of Southern Cameroon is quite isolated in this criminal crisis that is going on by the neighboring country, Republique of Cameroon, that is currently invading and destabilizing the peace-loving people of Southern Cameroon. It shouldn't have happened in the first place. By virtue of the United Nations Resolution 1514, specifically states that the people decolonizations, the people of Southern Cameroon meet all the various criteria set forth by the United Nations and these categories. And Equatorial Guinea, probably one of the fall into these categories, respect 1514 SV on decolonizations. And so therefore, the people of Southern Cameroon should have been decolonized, and we would not have arrived at this critical moment when our citizens and our brothers become the slaughtering meat by La Republique of Cameroon, and secretly sponsored by France. Today, I uproot the key architects responsible for drafting and sponsoring the genocide under the French authority, because of the citizens of Southern Cameroon become a source of supplier of agricultural product that fed the French. And the person responsible for this key genocide going on in Southern Cameroon indirectly is the Bernard Emi, the secret agent of France. He is in charge of the French security force, and he is personally responsible forcing with French president, including all of them that you see in these images. They are responsible deliberately refusing La Republique of Cameroon to continue with the genocide in Southern Cameroon, because the mineral deposit in Southern Cameroon is a priority for the French colonial legacy and undermine the people of Southern Cameroon and their ability to be able to govern themselves. Of course, that is why France blocked every aspect of discussion at the United Nations when it comes to La Republique du Cameroun. It blocked every aspect of discussion. It blocked every, I'm sure I'm just lacking words to describe the situation. Who is Bernard? Bernard is the Directorate of External Security. It's the Directorate of External Security in the French agency that's responsible to carry on the purpose. Right now that I'm speaking, they are probably in Southern Cameroon territory, providing security and intelligence to La Republique colonial masters to carry on genocide in Southern Cameroon, with the hope that they can secure and glue Southern Cameroon as part of La Republique territory. I can assure France, you are on the wrong side of history. Of course, you saw a few weeks ago or months ago when the French gathered young youth of Africa, pretend as though they love Africa as a whole. That is a hypocrisy. That is exactly hypocrisy to watch from France. France do not love Africa as a whole. It's for their own personal material benefit rather than the interest of Africa as a whole. It is quite amazing that despite the fact that La Republique is carrying on genocide and slaughtering the citizens of Southern Cameroon, France remained muted. France remained absolutely muted, despite the call from the various arms of government here in the United States. France remained silent and deploying his military architecture to assist its colonial territory, La Republique du Cameroun, and undermine the people of Southern Cameroon. Why should the people of Southern Cameroon be living in Nigeria when they have their territory? There is a boundary that separates the people of Southern Cameroon and La Republique du Cameroon. Let's bring one of La Republique citizens speaking up on the question of colonial legacy. Just stay tuned and just hold on.
Nation that you call yours, people can do what has been done to our children in West Cameroon. I call it West Cameroon because you will never take it out of our mouths again, because that is a territory in which we believe in freedom. To go out on the street and demonstrate is a basic
par les populations et par les communes. Les factures d'eau étaient payées dans les communes. Parce que c'est ce que les anglophones appellent community development, le développement communautaire. La population à la base prend en main son développement. Quand la SNEC est allée là-bas, pour dire que désormais, comme vous avez l'eau, vous payez les factures à la commune, nous on va mettre les compteurs chez vous, vous allez nous... Et je vais rappeler autre chose. Lorsque les deux Camerouns sont réunis, la SNEC, qui est la Société des eaux en vigueur au Cameroun oriental, trouve dans la zone anglophone des réseaux d'adduction d'eau très bien faits par les populations et par les communes. Les factures d'eau étaient payées dans les communes parce que c'est ce que les anglophones appellent community development, le développement communautaire. La population à la base prend en main son développement. Quand la SNEC est allée là-bas, pour dire que désormais, comme vous avez l'eau, vous payez les factures à la commune, nous on va mettre les compteurs chez vous, vous allez nous payer de l'argent. Chez nous les francophones. Les anglophones ont dit non. Et c'est pour ça, après Bamenda, vous ne trouvez plus la SNEC quelque part. Dans le nord-ouest, il n'y a pas. Ils ont interdit, ils ont refusé, et on n'a pas pu installer la SNEC chez eux. Donc, la décentralisation dont parle M. Paul Biya, c'est une décentralisation de façade. Quand vous lisez les droits sur la décentralisation, quand vous lisez les lois sur les décentralisations, et je parle, qu'est-ce qui est octroyé aux régions? Avant que les deux Cameroun ne soient réunis, la loi fédérale que vous avez là, la loi fédérale là, définissait les pouvoirs de chaque État fédéré. Si on part au niveau des hôpitaux, vous avez les hôpitaux, les centres de district qui sont dans les villages, les hôpitaux d'arrondissement, les hôpitaux départementaux, les hôpitaux régionaux. Qu'est-ce qu'on donne aux régions? Aucune loi ne le dit. Prenons l'éducation. Vous avez l'école maternelle, l'école primaire, l'école secondaire. Qu'est-ce qu'on donne aux régions? Aucune loi ne le dit. Donc, de quelle décentralisation quand on parle lorsque les compétences ne sont pas définies?
Justement,
And that is why we are saying that there are two Cameroons that came together. If you are telling us, like a state minister stood here last year and told us that what happened in Cameroon is like dropping a few cubes of sugar into a basin of water. Who is the sugar?
This is Comrade Daniel speaking here from the great state of Texas, here in the United States, on the ongoing genocide in Southern Cameroon. Why the massacre is continuing in Southern Cameroon territory. France, the architects, is romancing with the French-speaking, and in a due process that it shouldn't have happened in the first place. It shouldn't. It shouldn't. It shouldn't have happened in the first place. The people of Southern Cameroon initially have their own state government. They have their own government. They have their own institution. And a robust institution that was more than the La Republique du The Southern Cameroon institution, the Southern Cameroon government was more a robust, smart government. You have Endel, you have Foncha, you have Joa. But through the France manipulative of Britain in order to take control of the Southern Cameroon, because they discovered the oil deposit, mineral deposit in Southern Cameroon. That is the cause of the problem that the people of Southern France are going through this crisis. Because when France discovered that there was a mineral deposit in Southern Cameroon, therefore they manipulate France to the initial step. For example, they call for decolonization. Decolonization means that the territory that was previously under the German occupation be given their rightful independence. And that should have immediately been instituted. Of course, France is blocking every aspect because they are the permanent member in the Security Council. Because France is a permanent member in the Security Council and is blocking every aspect of discussion to be even brought into discussion on the question of Southern Cameroon. Because they block because of its colonial territory, La Republique du Cameroon. As you saw them, that is the president that was in power. Let's look at the legitimacy of Paul Biya. Let's look at the legitimacy and the manipulative of France to avoid any Southern Cameroon to ascend into the presidency of La Republique du Cameroon. In fact, when France manipulated Ahidjo to give up power, by virtue of La Republique Constitution, the Speaker of the Assembly, Paul Biya, ascended into power in 1982. When France manipulated La Republique to Ahidjo to give up power after 25 years of enslavement. 25 years. So, let's look at La Republique Constitution. In succession, by virtue of La Republique Constitution, the next person to ascend into the throne should Amadou Ahidjo depart. It was the Speaker of the Assembly. It was the Speaker of the Assembly, and not Paul Biya, who was at the time the Prime Minister. If you look at the same process going on now, now it is the Senate President, Cameroon. And in doing so, they make sure that they change every aspect to ensure that any channel that gives opportunity for the Anglophones need to be immediately erased. So, in fact, per the Constitution of la Republique du Cameroun, the person that's supposed to have succeeded Akijo per la Republique Constitution should have been Tende Muna. Should have been Tende Muna. In the case of a vacancy of the presidency, should have been Tende Muna as specified in la Republique Constitution. However, Bobia Montecu, because the assembly was an Anglophone, and so he does whatever he takes and proclaim himself to become the president. And since 1982 till the current moment, he has been in power and he has never leave power. And France is manipulating every aspect because France has the tendency to believe that the one they trust is better than to have a none, than to have the Anglophones in the power. So in fact, we have demonstrated a democratic institution, the first in West Africa. In the 50s and 60s, Southern Cameroon was the only country in West Africa to have ever transferred power from an elected official in the entire West African history. Southern Cameroon is the first with the elected of sorry, I'm kind of lost my voice. But anyway, and then become the first elected Prime Minister of Southern Cameroon. Secondly, you have Jongo Foncha, the second elected Prime Minister of Southern Cameroon. Third, you have Ngumjua, that become the elected President of Southern Cameroon. La Republique du Cameroon, in which the world believes that it's supposed to have a government, has never demonstrated any capability to show a transition of power. And yet, they seize the people of Southern Cameroon to just condole and accept it, and just, despite the fact that Southern Cameroon, at United Nations Resolution 1514 XB, met all the various criteria that the people of Southern Cameroon should have been a state on its own. Why? What is the benefit that the people of Southern Cameroon must remain under the control of a foreign dominant, La Republique du Cameroon? Because the mineral deposit in Southern Cameroon are the top priority to feed the European nations. And that is why the slaughtering is going on in Southern Cameroon territory. It is not a priority for the rest of the world community. They remain silent and they couldn't speak. Of course, let me bring, wait, just hold on, stay tuned.
Who is the what? I'm asking.
Wow. C'est sûr, hein? Il n'a pas voulu.
It's very interesting we're talking about peace and cooperation between South and South. How about peace and cooperation within a country? I was very delighted to hear that you start to talk now with those guys in the north, and that is really overdue. Do you hear me? Can you translate the question, please, to him? We now have a problem between, in the north of the country, English speaking, and the French-speaking part of the country, and there have been fighting.
Il demande par rapport à l'application de collaboration intra-nation à l'intérieur d'un même pays, faisant référence aux difficultés que votre pays connaît entre les différentes communautés. Est-ce que ça s'applique aussi au niveau...
As you watch, those are the military of La Republique du Cameroun intentionally setting home. This is not just one. There are about 3,000 homes burnt into ashes by the very destructive force of La Republique du Cameroun. About 3,000 homes burnt in Southern Cameroon territory by the very destructive force of La Republique du Cameroun. Give me the reason why people believe that the people of Southern Cameroon ought to stay with La Republique du Cameroon. Why is it that the people of Southern Cameroon can govern themselves? They must be under the umbrella of a foreign nation. In fact, the British administrative authority, in the entire its period of colonial legacy in Southern Cameroon territory, they did not provide subvention because the economic surplus of Southern Cameroon were unanimously high that do not need a support from the British government. And yet, the people of Southern Cameroon has own government that will function democratically, the best of West Africa. And yet, they believe that the people of Southern Cameroon should live under a military of destructive force. Because the mineral in Southern Cameroon are the priority to benefit the France. And that is why it doesn't matter as we speak. Why is the world so adamantly cruel towards human shield? It is quite amazing that the world community that you see are the most cruel society, that even though there is a clear evidence that they should act upon the evidence, despite the fact that many high-level government officials here in the United States have spoken. It doesn't matter for them to recognize that the people of Southern Cameroon ought to be able to live by themselves without foreign dominance. Because the land deposit and the mineral are more priority to fight the French. And that is why it's the priority. So they block every aspect of discussion for this damn what is so-called the United Nations, a trash can. I mean, it is time that we, the Africans, recognize that we will never be recognized as a human being as long as the Europeans are concerned. Their own interest is the priority. Imagine this slaughtering, burning of properties could have happened in France. It could have happened in Belgium. It could have happened in Germany. It could have happened in Italy. It could have happened in Switzerland. You would have seen the commotion of Europe staging an emergency to describe on how they can resolve the problems. But why, when it comes to African, the black race, it doesn't matter to them. It doesn't. It doesn't matter to them. Because they consider Africans as the race that doesn't worth it to them to even look at the crisis, that it wants to talk about it. Why should our brothers and sisters living in the forest by a foreign dominant? Because French colonial is the priority of the world community, that they care more than the African race as a concern. Then this brings me to this same question. Imagine if it was happening in Belgium. Imagine if it was happening in Germany. Imagine if it was happening in Switzerland or France itself. emergency session would have been called in. Even the mini media would have been spoken all over the TV. You saw it. A battalion of military burning homes. A battalion of military burning homes in a broad daylight. It is absolutely painful. It is absolutely painful to watch. Now let's listen to some of the key members of the US government that have spoken. Let's bring them again.
Nation that you call yours, people can do what has been done to our children in West Cameroon. I call it West Cameroon because you will never take it out of our mouths again, because that is a territory in which we believe freedom. To go out of the street and
I would like to see American diplomacy fully engaged in trying to contend with this challenge. You cited a number of other places where we have, I share your concerns about the elections in Uganda, concerns in Cameroon recently, particularly violence directed at the Anglophone population. So there are a whole series of places where we have challenges where I think the United States can help make a difference, and that starts with being engaged.
Of course, that is the U.S. Secretary of State. That's the U.S. Secretary of State. That's the highest level of cabinet of the United States, speaking about the issues. How many months has this? How many months are we now? Of course, after confirmation hearing, and he spoke with his French counterpart, they remain muted. As I'm speaking, right now as I'm speaking, there is ongoing genocide. There is ongoing sacred slaughtering of our brothers and sisters in Southern Cameroon. And the being provided information, intelligent information, is provided by Bernard Emi, who is the director of the French military secret agency that is responsible. And yet, what can we do? What can we do? I'm asking this question because that's what U.S. Senate representative. What can we do? United States has authority. United States has authority. Less than 24 hours can make a significant difference if the United States choose to do so. Why is it so hard? Why is it so difficult? Does it mean that the black are just animals that France can go and slaughter at will? Yes, blacks are just animals and that France can slaughter at will so long as the mineral deposit is the priority for France. What is wrong? Why must the people of Southern Cameroon remain under the cruelty of a foreign nation, La Republique du Cameroon? Why can they not live by themselves? In Equatorial Guinea, the population is not 1/10 of the Southern Cameroon, and they are governed by themselves. Why must the people of Southern Cameroon live under a foreign dominant, La Republique du Cameroon? Why? That's the U.S. Secretary of State. It's not just the U.S. Secretary of State. Other key members of officials have spoken. Let me bring some other key members of officials on the question of Southern Cameroon. Why is it so hard? Why is it so hard that the world community, if the world community can form the United Nations in 1945 to solve problems, why is it so difficult at now, a single small nation, and it's so difficult for them to take action and resolve the problem so that people can live home in peaceful mind? Why must they live under the foreign control of La Republique du Cameroon? What is it so wrong? Just stay tuned.
It's a basic right for us. And that is why we are saying that there are two Cameroons that came together. If you are telling us, like a state minister stood here last year and told us that what happened in Cameroon is like dropping a few cubes of sugar into a basin of water. Who is the sugar?
Paul Biya ne faiblit pas. Une semaine après l'arrivée du président camerounais en Suisse, ils étaient près de 250 à manifester samedi dans le centre-ville. Il prévoit de se mobiliser à nouveau et d'importants moyens sont déployés devant l'Intercontinental pour assurer la sécurité de celui qui règne depuis 37 ans sur le Cameroun. Briac Boucaud et Cécile Trantien. C'est un hôtel sous haute surveillance. 3 fourgons de police et des gardes du corps postés en permanence devant l'entrée. Cet après-midi encore, les opposants étaient gardés à bonne distance. Car c'est dans cet hôtel que Paul Biya, président du Cameroun depuis 1982, réside depuis fin juin. Un hôtel devenu sa résidence secondaire ou presque, car il y séjourne plusieurs mois par an depuis des années, alors que son pays se déchire autour de la barrière linguistique.
La crise avec les régions anglophones du Cameroun a, selon un rapport très récent de International Crisis Group, créé à peu près 2000 morts, un demi-million de déplacés internes et jusqu'à 35 000 réfugiés au Nigeria voisin.
Genève est devenue le point névralgique de la contestation. Samedi dernier, pro et anti-Paul Biya ont essuyé des tirs de gaz lacrymogène en plein centre-ville.
Je crois qu'au vu des risques importants qu'il y avait, de grandes tensions et de frictions entre les opposants et les partisans du régime, on se doit d'être entre les deux pour éviter qu'il y ait des blessés, pire.
Venus porter plainte contre les gardes du corps du président, ces opposants sont surpris de la tournure des événements à Genève.
On a détruit, selon moi, le symbole de Genève. Quand je me trouve tabassé par la garde présidentielle.
Now we come to this critical moment. And these are the people that are causing atrocity and destruction of Africa. The Directorate of General Security. The Directorate of General Security at the French presidency. That is the person responsible for the atrocity and slaughter. They assure La Republique du Cameroun that France is behind them and that they do whatever it takes to stop and fuel down every aspect that is going on around the world. Of course, because it's black race and the United Nations, it doesn't matter. Because since it's black race, it doesn't matter. Slaughtering is going on in Southern Cameroon. It doesn't matter to them. They can do whatever it takes, so long as the interest of France is spearheaded. What is wrong? What is absolutely wrong? What is absolutely wrong with the black race? That they become an animal of slaughtering to satisfy the interest of Europeans. To satisfy the interest of Europeans. While our people, they have no benefit. They're living basically in a crumbs of bread. But so long as brutal regimes are being stationary and kept in place and support the interests of France, everything is all right. Everything is all right. Everything is all right. I mean, you saw the Algerian crisis, especially the territory that happened to do with France. You have the Algeria, the crisis that was going on daily. You have the Ivory Coast, you have Senegalese, you have Chadian. In fact, all the French territory have a problem as I'm speaking. All the French territory have a problem, and it has to do with the French. This Directorate of External Security is responsible for the machinery that is carrying on this genocide in Africa. And yet, our people doesn't deserve all this rubbish. We are not colonial territory of the Republique du Cameroun. We are not. And therefore, recognize the people of Southern Cameroon that they move out of this rubbish. France can do whatever it takes with its colonial territory. But we will not be part of this rubbish. We will not be part of this rubbish. We will not. We will not. We will not. The United States can make a significant difference. The United States has the ability, the capability, the mind, and everything that I can talk of. United States can do away with this. Maybe it's time the United States do the good for the greatest number. How much evidence does the United States need to take action? Or they're just acting as they are not clueless? We cannot imagine them slaughtering. Is it because they are Africa? Is it because they are animals? Is it because they care less? What is the purpose of the United Nations? To serve the interests of Europeans. That's the purpose of the United Nations. That is the purpose. If you look at the matter of legality, the United Nations Resolution 1540, that's the vote that took place at the United Nations headquarters. That's just underneath, below Bernard and me, in these images as a broadcast. The exact population that voted at the UN, they respect human dignity in all aspects, irrespective of their military might. The people of Southern Cameroon, the amount of people that voted, the amount of nations that voted to recognize the independence of Southern Cameroon are more than those voted against Israel. Maybe because Africa needs to start research on military development so that they can be able to be brought to the table as equal partners. Because peace and security cannot be guaranteed so long as you don't have the military might. And you cannot be brought to the center of discussion because the military is the key aspect that will determine your position to be able to sit on the central of discussion. While the people of Southern Cameroon are asking for help, it is irrelevant to this amazing, strong superpower to take into consideration the key factor that the people of Southern Cameroon ought to be free. Free indeed. But yet, it doesn't matter to them so long as the interests of France